In a major development, with potential impact on Bill Gates' trial in the Netherlands, a Dutch government official has disclosed that the COVID pandemic was orchestrated as a military operation. The official went on to admit that throughout the pandemic, the nation was operating under direct orders from NATO. According to the government official, the pandemic played out according to a coordinated behind-the-scenes strategy, suggesting that the forced vaccinations and brutal lockdowns had nothing to do with public health and everything to do with advancing a hidden agenda. The news is a major setback for Bill Gates and Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla, both of whom are on trial in the Netherlands, facing accusations of misleading the public about COVID vaccinations. Before we dive in, join the People's Voice Locals community if you haven't already, and sign up to become a member of the world's first ever cyber nation that truly believes in life, liberty, and the pursuit of your dreams. Visit joson.com and click the Join Us button today and jolt the sheeple out of their mass formation psychosis.
Turns out that the vaccines were developed not by Moderna and Pfizer. They were developed by NIH. The patents are owned 50% by NIH. Nor were they manufactured by Pfizer or by Moderna. They were manufactured by military contractors. And basically, Pfizer and Moderna were paid to put their stamps on those vaccines as if they came from the pharmaceutical industry. But, that's not what they were doing. They were coming from, this was a military project.
Naturally, the mainstream media went into overdrive, turning on RFK and branding us as conspiracy theorists and worse. They tried to silence us, claiming we were spreading what they called dangerous disinformation. This is exactly what happens when you're over the target. Of course, it was only a matter of time before the mainstream media was proved wrong yet again, and the so-called conspiracy theorists were able to chalk this up to another victory in the war for truth and justice. This week, the Dutch health minister made the earth-shattering announcement that COVID was a military operation, and the Dutch government were taking orders from NATO, the United States, and various intelligence agencies.
Het is wel zo dat deze opdracht die ik heb gekregen bij het aantreden niet één is die natuurlijk conform is, wat ik altijd vanaf die kant heb gezegd. En dat is zo en dat is pijnlijk. Maar toch zal ik moeten uitvoeren de opdrachten die ik gekregen heb bij aanvang van het aanvaarden van mijn post. Neem niet weg, en dat zei ik u zojuist ook al, dat ik kort na het aantreden geïnformeerd ben over weerbaarheid en de bredere context waarin wij ons bevinden en de overlap die dat geeft met deze posten op pandemische paraatheid. En daar zal ik mee moeten dealen en een oplossing voor moeten vinden, want NAVO-verplichtingen, daar zijn we aan gehouden. Dus op dit moment wordt er geïnventariseerd onder leiding van de NCTV wat er allemaal moet gebeuren. Dan hebben we een stukje basis, dat hebben we actief gezien tijdens de coronacrisis. Dan hebben we het over deze extra investering, waar een hele grote overlap, zo niet een volledige overlap zit. En dan hebben we het over andere zaken die we nu in kaart aan het brengen zijn van wat nou als de situatie escaleert, wat nou als we aan onze NAVO-verplichtingen moeten voldoen, wat nou als het nog verder escaleert, dat ben ik allemaal in kaart aan het brengen. En onder leiding van de NCTV zullen wij in het voorjaar, dus voor de volgende begroting, dus niet deze begroting, maar voor de volgende begroting met dekking en oplossingen komen.
Don't let the casual tone fool you. This is a major admission from a very senior member of a WF-infiltrated government. And it's set to have very serious consequences for Gates and Bourla in their trials in the Netherlands, where they stand accused of killing and maiming millions of people.
We got some nice news as well out of Holland. On October 24th, the new Dutch Minister of Health, Floor Ajema, admitted in their parliamentary chamber that COVID was a military operation. Mm-hmm. She said, "We must follow NATO, US, and NCTV orders." Ajema said that pandemic preparedness is related to treaty obligations and that the intelligence service is in charge. The news from Ajema fits with what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has repeatedly stated about the production of the coronavirus vaccines in the US. And as we know, according to him, this was a military operation with close involvement of the US Department of Defense and the military-industrial complex. Defense, according to Kennedy, was in full charge and paid pharmaceutical companies for their brand names so people would think they were getting something from Pfizer or Moderna. What do you make of that, Ted?
Well, I think you and I and many others believe that this is a Department of Defense initiative. This is, our government's against us. This is the military-industrial complex. But this is the first time that a sitting member of a government, and in this case it's the Minister of Health, publicly announced it within the parliamentary chamber that this was an intelligence operation, and I think that disclosure is absolutely earth-shaking in that it confirms that all of us that were so-called conspiracy theorists actually had a handle on what was going on here. But that's got to shake up the average person to know that this wasn't really about a health initiative. This was a military operation. And then it begs the question, what was the goal of this when our own governments and our own militaries were acting against the people? And that question is going to create some sleepless nights for a lot of people.
The global elite have been lying to humanity every step of the way about every detail, as part of an effort to terrorize the masses into compliance. There's just one problem for Schwab and his co-conspirators in government cabinets and big pharma boardrooms in global capitals. Millions of people around the world did not fall for the swindle, and we're forensically examining the crime scene. Gates and Burler's trial in the Netherlands is just the start. With the incoming Trump administration resolute in holding them accountable for their actions, this time Trump has the team he needs to deal a serious blow to the globalist New World Order agenda. This is why we're now facing the most intense assault since the early days of the COVID pandemic. We must stay focused and united to overcome these devastating, multi-pronged attacks. Today's sponsor is pillsforever.com. If you think why such as ivermectin, cancer, listen to
1% and the media.
We don't need the advertising.
To dog or a weak medicine that
4170 to take advantage of this fantastic offer.
Thank
The
you.
pandemic was only the first phase of the great PsyOpp. With sovereign nations under attack from all angles by the global elites agencies, including the WF and WHO, it's never been more important to remember what they did to us. The once proud nation of Australia has been completely infiltrated by the globalist elites, receiving praise from Bill Gates for managing the pandemic precisely as directed by these powerful interests. In other words, Australia has become the testing ground for the New World Order.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are
Neighbors.
free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is
In Melbourne, live now.
By the unprovoked police violence on Melbourne Street.
Why hasn't Victorian Premier Dan Andrews been sent to prison for his crimes against humanity? Prosecutions are necessary, Because the elite have become so arrogant, they're now boasting about their victory over humanity in public forums. Never forget what this Bayer executive admitted in front of the camera.
The mRNA vaccines are an example for that cell and gene therapy. I always like to say, if we had surveyed 2 years ago in the public, would you be willing to take gene or cell therapy and inject it into your body, we would have probably had a 95% refusal rate. I think this pandemic has also opened many people's eyes to innovation in the way that was maybe not possible before.
Not only does he admit that mRNA vaccines are gene therapy that irrevocably alter the DNA of humanity forever, he also admits that the gene therapy was marketed as vaccines to gain public trust, and humanity was coerced into agreeing to take the shots. These people are dangerous psychopaths with God complexes, and they need to be stopped before they get the chance to unleash a second pandemic, something Bill Gates himself has repeatedly hinted is on the way. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has warned us for years that Gates is exactly the kind of psycho to play God with the human race. In fact, that is Gates' whole modus operandi. Gates isn't the only one. This is a real unedited clip of Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer, receiving a line of questioning he doesn't appreciate. Notice anything strange? Just wait until he's in the dock being questioned about maiming and killing millions. The global elite have proved that there's no crime too great or grievous for them to commit as part of their plan to depopulate the world and enslave humanity. The COVID vaccine and pandemic were in the works for years. How do we know? Bill Gates has a history of leaving clues about what was about to happen. He also invested hundreds of millions in BioNTech just months before the pandemic. The elites also left their fingerprints all over a trail of 40 dead scientists, all of whom worked for the US government in the years before the pandemic, and all of whom were in a position to blow the whistle on the COVID PsyOpp. Some were found stabbed to death in the trunks of cars, and some wrapped their vehicles around trees after their brake fluid mysteriously disappeared.
The following are actual facts surrounding the mysterious deaths of top microbiologists over a decade prior to the 2020 pandemic. Professor Wiley performed biological research, sometimes jointly funded by the Department of Defense and the NIH. He was an expert on the human immune response to infection and had recently investigated several dangerous viruses, including HIV, Ebola, herpes, and influenza. Professor Wiley's body was recovered from the Mississippi River about a month after his disappearance. More biologists started to die under suspicious circumstances. Many were world-acclaimed scientific researchers specializing in infectious diseases and biological agents, such as anthrax, HIV, and DNA sequencing. As the body count of infectious disease experts continued to climb, connections to weapons research began to surface. By 2005, we lost 40 microbiologists in less than 4 years. Some were found stabbed to death in the trunk of cars, and some wrapped their cars around trees after their brake fluid disappeared. During this time, it was discovered that they all worked with the government or government contractors on projects related to bioterrorism, flu pandemics, or anthrax.
We have endured some of humanity's darkest days, and it's vital we stay united in our mission to remove these tyrants from power. Those responsible for this global upheaval must be held accountable for their crimes against humanity. Here at The People's Voice, we are determined to continue exposing the elite, but we can't do it by ourselves. Subscribe to the channel and join the People's Voice Locals community to support the channel, join our amazing team and gain access to exclusive and uncensored content.
Sorry people, not too much advertising, although they're very good sites. Sorry mensen, ik probeer het adverteren hieruit te halen, alhoewel het zijn ook allemaal opvolgende goede bronnen, betrouwbare bronnen.
Brothers spying and censoring your every move. IPv6 is set to revolutionize the way information is disseminated on the internet by eliminating the need for big tech companies to provide unreliable, overpriced services such as self-hosting, email, and data management. IPv6 enables an easy and accessible way for you to host your own web and email server with direct end-to-end connections and enhanced security. This means no snooping for Big Brother, and no interference from the technocratic elites. If Hillary Clinton can get away with running her own server, why shouldn't you? Go to thepeoplesvoice.tv/IPv6 to